Hey everyone, we're back, back with Paul. And today we decided that we want to talk a little bit about the astral. Paul and I were talking earlier this week, and he was telling me some really interesting stories he has from when he was a kid. And I think the astral is really important because a lot of the confusion that we see, on the planet right now, among our societies and everything, it's because there's a lot of things going on with the astral that people don't realize. Like, humans
Absolutely.
interact with the astral all the time, and you don't even realize it. And with your consciousness, you can create things, project it into the astral, then see it. And so you think it's something that's external to you, and maybe it's not. It creates mass confusion. So we thought we'd go into it a little bit. So Paul, maybe you want to take it away? Maybe you can start with what you were that story about when you were a little kid and you first went out of body, or one of your early out
Yeah.
of body experiences. That was pretty cool.
So, like kids aren't scared of anything really. And I was just laying in my bed and, when you see children sitting on seats, sometimes they scuff their feet backwards and forward, right, on the carpet or they swing their legs, whatever. I was doing that, but I was laying straight, but I was doing it on the carpet on the floor. And then I looked down and saw that my legs were still straight in the bed, but my feet were touching the floor. Just as a kid, no fear, just rolled over, stood up, looked and saw myself awake, laying there. And I thought, oh, okay, well, I'm going to go for a walk, and went to grab the doorknob, and my hand went through the doorknob, and still no fear, of course, as a child, and but just sort of decided to walk through the wall, which I did. Interestingly, where the hallway was, there was no windows in the hallway, and it was very dark. And I couldn't find my way out of that hallway. Even trying to walk through the walls or whatever, I just couldn't, right? And so I thought, oh, well, I'll just go to sleep. And so I just laid down and went to sleep. And in the morning when I woke up, my body was in the hallway.
So you
My
woke up. So when you lay down in the hallway when you were out of body, at that point your body was still in the bed asleep.
Yeah, well, my body was awake, and then I went for a walk. I fell asleep, and then when I woke up, my body was in the hallway.
So what do you mean that your body was awake in the bed? So you think so? It's almost like a bilocation that you were experiencing in a sense. Because were you experiencing any sensations from your body on the bed?
No, because you don't have to be asleep to leave your body. That's
Mm.
really important to understand. You can be fully awake, and you should be fully awake, and be standing there and be bilocated. So your consciousness is standing next to you. Next to you, you're looking at yourself with your eyes closed. You're trying not to focus from the physical form through to yourself, because if you do, you instantly get pulled back in, right? So that's an interesting phenomenon that anyone can do if they practice.
So do you think that your body was essentially in like a trance state of some kind? Um, or what do you think your body would have been experiencing? I mean, because I've been in that state where I call it the mind awake, body asleep,
Mm,
but you're kind of like half, it's like I'm aware and I can feel my body, but I can tell my body's like kind of, asleep, and then
yeah,
maybe I can get out of body. But I always, just assume, my body's in a close to a sleep state or something, or it's in a, very deep,
yeah,
resting state of some sort.
yeah, absolutely. For anyone that doesn't know, when you go to OBE, if you stay as still as possible and don't move, and then what you do is you normally just drop yourself down as you would as if you're going to sleep, and right on the very edge of where you're about to go to sleep, you hold that and you keep holding it, and at some point you may start hearing crackling or electrical sounds or whatever, or rushing sounds. At that point, that's when, for me, I just am able to stand up and go into the astral. And I mean that's you would suggest that your body probably is fairly much deeply relaxed and deeply asleep. Um, because what you're trying to do, and I was thinking about this the other day, the first thing that I was trying to do as an adult is to see through my etheric eyes. So rather than trying to get out of body, which, just trying is actually is counterintuitive, is to lay there until you can see through your eyelids, and you can use your etheric eyes, and that way you can look around the room, and that way you know that you've engaged your etheric body that way.
Right. And this is how we got onto the topic earlier in the week, because I was telling you
Yeah.
what happened to me this week, that I was, I woke up early and I was trying to go back to sleep. It was like 4 in the morning, and then, I must be drifting in and out of sleep, but I'm kind of half in, half out. I'm lying on my side and I can feel myself laying on my side. And,
Mm.
and I could sense like my wife was in bed next to me. I thought that she was like, her hand was leaning over and touching me. So I was just thinking about it for some reason. And then all of a sudden, bam, I could see straight through. It's like I
Yeah.
saw her. I was like, saw everything. It happened so quickly, and it was just so sudden. It frightened me for a second, and I thought, oh wait, this is cool. It's like I can, this is like astral sight or something. I can see, and I could like see her perform, but it wasn't like a. To me, it looked like I'm assuming it's her etheric body or something, because it wasn't like like the normal physical form. It was a little, like a little, I don't know, not in focus. And then I must have. I had the same problem, like you're saying, like also when you realize it, you maybe get a little bit excited, you're trying to control it, and then boom, I'm asleep. Next thing I know, I'm waking up, I'm like, God damn it, I could have done something else. I could have left, I could have done something, but I just fell asleep.
But the more you do it, and I used to sort of go out OBE at least once or twice a week, um, the more you do it, the less interested you become in how exciting it is. Because once you get away from that, you can get excited about being out of body, right? And forget about the body. Once the body's excited, then it's all over, really. So, I used to. Well, this is what happened. I was with somebody, and it was nighttime and it was dark, and they were telling me that there was somebody in the room, in the room. And so I just said, "Oh, hang on." And I jumped out of body and looked, and there were three sort of people standing there. And I just said to them, "You guys, you need to leave." Right. And so they just left. And that's really common, that the living, they're the ones that are actually walking around and leaving their bodies, and they don't just stay in what's called real-time astral, which is your own space. They move into other areas. They use their thought processes to teleport themselves, I guess, to other places. And so people often will, move around the astral, and will view things. And the astral is an incredibly complicated space. Um, it's as if somehow you've got 11 dimensions all stacked into one place. And so you might somehow go through to a place where everything's upside down, or completely disjointed and chaotic, or just normal, right? The other thing is with the astral is that the uh, if you could have a situation where you're on a timeline. So I'll give you an example. I've hopped out of body, and then all of a sudden heard the front door get unlocked, and I heard a couple walking in, and I was in my bedroom, and I walked out in the astral into the lounge room, and the couple had a couple of bags of groceries, and they put them onto the bench and started to unpack them, and they were laughing and they were quite happy, couple. And I thought to myself, this has happened in the past. These people must have lived here in the past, and now I'm living here, and all I've done is somehow jumped on a astral timeline into their timeline, right? And so started to learn a lot more about the astral, because I thought, oh wow, if you can do that, then what else is possible? But it's what I was really looking for was a guide, right? Because I thought to myself, if I'm going to do this stuff, I don't want to go into the astral and go into places where there's other stuff that I can't control. And so I would often, before I would do, astral traveling, go, if there's anybody out there, that wants to help me with this, I'd be quite happy to do that. The other thing is that also learning to OBE did was, it taught me how to break out of, what's that called when you're awake in your body, sorry, awake in your mind, but asleep in your body, and you can't move.
Sleep paralysis.
Yeah, sleep. So you get a lot of that when you're trying to do OBE as well. It's just part of it, but you've got to learn to control it as well. So that was really important. But talking about the astral now, right now, with everything that's going on the planet, the astral's actually been amplified, immensely, and the level of energy in the astral is quite high. And a lot of people are reporting to me, and I've seen this so many times myself, astral creatures, but manifesting in the physical 3D space, and you can see them. And we call them wet cats or, whatever. But you'll see little bugs walking around or like centipedes and stuff. And I had someone here the other day, and they looked on the ground and they said, "Oh," because I was watching it. That was the thing. I was watching this little centipede walking across the ground. I knew it was in the astral, and they looked and they said, "I can see a centipede walking across the floor." I said, "Yeah, it's in the astral." And they go, "What sort of crazy house is this?" Right?
So what's going on there? I mean, the issue is, I mean, like when you go back to the example of the people that you saw with the groceries, if you didn't know kind of what was going on, you might assume you're seeing a ghost, right?
Mm,
And so some people might think, oh, that's a ghost, but really it's not. It's like you're starting to interact, you're interfacing with the astral, and now you're seeing things happening in the astral, but that's not really, they're not really there. That's not really a ghost. It's like a recorded image, almost like a projection of energy that gets recorded into the astral. And now since you can interact and interface with the astral, you see it. But if you don't know that, you might say, oh my God, there's a ghost in my living room. If you don't, you might not even realize you're out of body.
yeah, that's right. And so a lot of people misunderstand when they maybe are developing as psychics or mediums. They may move into the astral and see someone, a loved one, and they believe that they're actually talking to the spirit or trying to interact with the spirit. But they're actually only interacting with the energetic replay of the person. The actual person themselves is transitioned in spirit realm. And of course, everything you do gets recorded in the astral as well. And that's why you can go back to previous conversations or actually even back to previous generations of your own family. And if you are trained, if you train yourself, um, it's like you somehow mix a bit of remote viewing in with out of body experiences. And so you're
Mm-hmm.
remote viewing that generational timeline, and then you extend yourself to that as well. So it's possible to go to timelines.
And so what's happening now is that basically, the astral is very much, affected by human consciousness. It's very malleable, right? And it's very reactive to consciousness. And so
Yeah.
we're all constantly. That's why everything's recorded. You're constantly projecting into the astral. And right now, what's happening because of the period that we're in, this time when things are just getting a little bit crazier. People are, a lot of people are waking up in different ways. We're projecting more and more into the astral, which is why, like as you say, the energy in the astral is increasing, and why I haven't heard of this yet, but what you're just mentioning, this phenomenon of maybe things starting to appear in our regular world that are actual astral entities, but it's like the astral and the physical are intersecting a little bit more.
Absolutely. I mean, the amount of people that contact me and say, I'm seeing this in my house. And for me, I'm like, oh yeah, that's normal because I've normalized it. I don't worry about it. But for other people, it seems to be a bit scary for them. Like they may see a black shadow or a shape or something in there, and I'm like, yeah, don't worry about it. It's just it's just going to actually increase. The level of activity is going to increase as well. And it's funny because I was watching Stargate SG1 the other day, and they had an episode where they brought a machine in. When they turned the machine on, suddenly people were able to see the astral creatures moving around. And I laughed because I thought to myself, that's actually what's going on at the moment, but there's no machine involved.
Right. So then you can see why it can get so confusing. Because if you see something, like you might misidentify it. Now you get into oh, am I seeing a demon? Is something here?
Yeah.
Am I seeing an alien? Right. And so now you start to get a lot of misclassification of phenomenon, because one of the things that the Zeta have said to us is that, a lot of what people are experiencing are really projections of their own consciousness. It's thought forms that people are creating themselves. Isn't that like one of the issues with some forms of E5? You get a large group of people, they go out, they want to see, everyone's hoping to see something. You create those little lights. There's little lights, yeah, but you might be, or the group energy, all those people together with that same desire and intent, like your consciousness becomes more powerful in a group, and you create that. So that's a little bit, seems to be a little bit of what's happening now is that, as we're becoming more aware of things, we're creating a lot of this ourselves.
Yeah, of course. So, when you create these, and if you called them a thought form and they were done by a group, it'd be called an egregore. And so when people are doing these mass events, they're looking up and they're seeing these lights in the sky, there will be a percentage of time, and not all the time, where that's just a creation of the group. And I would say to people, okay, the evidence here has to be, if it's really a craft, you ask the craft to come down really low so you can see the craft. If it's just going to stay away out on the very, outreaches of the biosphere, then of course it's just a reflection of consciousness. I mean, it can be lots of things, but at least if you have an understanding of that's what it could be, then you are able to discount certain things rather than just automatically applying everything's extraterrestrials and aliens,
Yeah,
demons.
and that's one of the interesting things, when you read the Zeta interviews, is how complicated it can be to understand what some phenomenon can be. Because sometimes the Zeta will say, well, like it could be this, could be this, could be this. There's many possibilities, and it kind of makes sense when you realize how powerful consciousness is. There's not just
Yeah,
one way of experiencing things, right? And when you realize that all humans have a very powerful consciousness. Everyone, controls it to varying degrees, but you can create a lot, with your mind, and you may not realize it. Like as you've told me before, that a lot of poltergeist activity really is also, it's like it's that same phenomenon. It could be a developing medium that doesn't realize
yeah.
it yet, can't really control their consciousness, and they're creating this phenomenon around them, which could be sounds, it could be, cabinets slamming open, but it's their mind doing it.
I worked with a person that was a bit terrified of what was going on around them. So basically, they said to me, they keep hearing knocks. And I said to them, oh, okay. I said, so how can we replicate that? And they said, well, I'll knock on the table and you watch what happens. And so they knocked twice on the table. And then there was two knocks in the wall. And so, being the skeptic that I am, I went outside, had a look. There was nobody there. Came back in, checked all the windows, checked all the doors. I said, right, now do it again. And we repeated that process about 5 or 6 times. Each time, the energy from the person was being projected uh, onto the wall by them. They didn't like it, and you can't blame them that they don't like it. So I said to them, look, basically, do you have a cat? And they said yes. I said, right, if you put the cat on the end of the bed when you go to sleep at night, it will stop happening. And it actually did. And the reason it did was because the person's frequency shifted because it was intertwined with their loving pet. And so, of course, that shifted their energy out of that um, stage where they were projecting their energy as well. And the other thing that was happening with that person was the drawers were opening in their room, the drawers of their cabinet, and so their clothing cabinet. So that all stopped the minute they just put the cat with them.
Interesting. So then, if that's happening to a person, then the solution is to begin training, right? To start to develop, then gain control, and realize that's you creating. I mean, it's so interesting because it's skeptics, and it's great to be a skeptic because you should always be trying to figure out what's really going on. But they think of everything as either true or not true.
Yeah.
Everything, it's either true or it's some sort of fraud. But there's this whole other range of possibilities, which is there's something really happening, but it's not any one of those options. There's another option, So it's like, with a poltergeist. Is it poltergeist? No, it's not. But this person isn't lying, and this person is not a fraud. Something is happening, but it's not an external entity that's coming and haunting them or whatever it is. There's this other range of possibilities of your consciousness, other people's consciousness doing things, affecting things. And you've even mentioned to me the possibility of people having what they consider to be an encounter with an alien, some sort of close encounter of some kind, which really could be an astral encounter. and not actually
Absolutely.
true extraterrestrials.
Yeah. So basically, if a person has been taken and the whole thing is just embedded in the astral, there's the possibility that a person, when they're asleep themselves, and when you're asleep, you lift out of your body a little bit, that if you enter into that frame of that abduction process, that person, you could completely relive that and wake up and believe that you've been taken. I'm not saying I'm not saying it hasn't happened, because it had to have happened for it to be in the astral. But this is where people need to understand: did I have contact, or was it somebody else's contact? Because you'd have to look at who were the beings that were there, and generally you get this whole narrative. There was a little grey, and there was a tall grey, and then there was a mantis, and then there was a reptilian or something. That's just some narrative that's created by beings so that they can basically, I don't know, for some reason, either try to make somebody feel comfortable, or it may be that the person really likes mantis beings. So, of course, the mantis being starts talking to them to keep them calm. But it's one that may not even be their experience. And two, if it is happening, then, of course, they're just watching a narrative that's taking place, like a construct.
It's so confusing. I mean, when you really, I mean, that's one of the things that I really got out of reading the Zeta interviews is the possibilities of what can happen. It's so complex, that it's really mind boggling. I mean, because just think of this. Someone can have an abduction experience, but then the question is, was it really you that had the experience? Or were you unknowingly in the astral living, it's almost like you're walking into the Akashic records, right? It's like that happened, it's recorded in the astral, and you just happen to walk across it, and now you're experiencing it as if it happened to you. Maybe it happened to you, maybe it didn't. I mean, that's something that I imagine. I mean, I'd never even considered that as a possibility. It's just wild to think about that.
There's two things to this. So the first thing is plausible deniability. And if anyone reads the Zeta interviews or the primer, I'll read about what the Zetas talk and the spirit people talk about plausible deniabilities. This is quite an interesting subject. I'm actually doing a video on it tomorrow. It's more about, they want to keep people to a point where they're always interested but not in fear, right? And so with the plausible deniability, something will happen and you'll think while you're experiencing it, you know it's happening, but after the event, you'll then start to second guess whether it actually did happen. And that's part of the fabric of everybody's existence that people will always question. And this is to do with real disclosure. So this is going to be a pretty interesting subject that we're talking about. So the other thing is that sometimes the astral blends with the physical reality, and you may see a distortion or no
So can you say that
distortion.
again? We got
Oh, okay.
so sometimes the astral blends with what?
The physical reality, and it may be. I was in a place once where you could see lots of people walking around, but the people that were with me couldn't see them. Right. And so if you can shift your consciousness while you're awake to see into the astral and see all the things that people may do, run around, kick a football in the park or walk around or whatever, that you're really just viewing something that's taken place previously. And this is why it is a bit confusing. But, after being in and doing this a lot, you start to understand, oh, okay, this is what's taking place. But if you don't have the experience of it, yeah, you're definitely going to assign it to something else, which probably isn't happening at all.
And then the whole reason for the plausible deniability is essentially also has to do with free will, right? I mean that the alien civilizations that are interacting with us want to maintain the free will of each person to either accept or reject, other the reality of what's happening to a certain degree. In other words, part of the goal of it is that you need to start seeking yourself. You need to start looking and researching yourself into what's going on. So they never come and just tell you, boom, here it is. Here's all the facts. Here's our little, our little brochure. Here's what's going on. At most, it's to wake up just a little bit so you get curious and you start looking into things, right? Isn't that kind of that's my understanding a little bit of the process, and part of it is to slowly wake the planet up, slowly wake each individual and then therefore the collective consciousness.
Yeah. So that's what they're doing. So that's what they're doing. From the extraterrestrials' perspective, in regards to disclosure, it's more about creating an environment where it's conducive to contact. Now, right now, looking at this planet, it's not conducive to contact, right? And there's multiple scenarios that would have to be gone through if extraterrestrials disclosed today for themselves, not humans disclose the extraterrestrial contact. So this is, they've been working for many years to create this situation using the plausible deniability, whereas you can always assign it to either A or B. There's never any firm thing with spirits or astral or whatever, because these are things of consciousness. And I understand why it needs to be plausible deniability, because you must always question everything. Because if they're teaching you and you are questioning things, and when I say them, I mean the extraterrestrials, it teaches you to question the entities that come to you, to ask for evidence from those beings. Who are you? The same that you would question anything that happened in the astral to you as well. Because the astral is really, it's not an infinite space. This is the other thing. It actually has gates that you have to walk through to get from one existence to the other. And those gates are guarded, and you're not allowed to just walk through them, right? So I happened to come across the edge of the astral once, and there was a gate there, and there was two beings that were watching the gate. Yeah, so the astral isn't infinite. It's although it looks like it could be, because funny thing is the further inside you go, the bigger the space becomes. All right, so that's one phenomenon. But the other one is that there's actually edges to the astral, and sometimes, and it's only ever happened once, you can come across a gate, and the gate is always guarded. You're not allowed to exit through those gates. And I know other people that have come. I actually met about 6 or 7 people that have come to the gate, and they were told exactly the same sentence as I was told. I won't be repeating it, because it's evidence for me when someone contacts me and says, I went to this gate and I was told this, and it's exactly the same words that I was told. And it was terrifying.
I've read about that somewhere. I don't remember where, but in one of the books I have of some, some astral travelers, I've heard about that phenomenon before as well. That's interesting.
Yeah, yeah. I'm not sure if you've ever experienced the net when you're asleep, and then you leave your body and you try and fly, and as you go up, suddenly wires start appearing above people. That's another phenomenon as well. It's as though there's a ceiling above you. And interestingly, it kept happening to me every week, and I got really stubborn. I was going to get past this thing, and so I had this plan, and I managed to get past it. Right, so I've got outside of this net that was basically over the whole dream space, and I thought, right, I'm going into the universe, and I've got a long, long way from the planet, and I've looked back and seen Earth, and then looked where I was and thought, I have no idea where I'm going. And I had to return back to the planet because I didn't know where I was going.
I've definitely had all the time, if I lucid dream or if I go out of body and I try and fly up, I always hit a limit. And it's like it's like 50 to 100 feet, and I can't fly higher. I don't think I've ever actually seen a net, maybe one time, and then I saw like a grid or something like that. And I think I made it through once, and I made it to to like the edge of the atmosphere. I was actually trying to go to the moon, but I didn't get all the way. But all of a sudden, it's like I was trying, and then all of a sudden, I was like, I could kind of see stars like right on the edge of the atmosphere, and then I don't know, I must have gotten excited or something. And next thing I know, I'm waking up. But that problem of like I can't fly very high happens to me all the time. I can never fly very high.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. This is it's It's interesting. I think, the big takeaway from this is that, the experiences that we're seeing, that people are reporting, there's a lot more possibilities than either it's true or false, it's aliens or it's not. There's a whole range of, phenomenon of consciousness that are real, are true, happen, and it's very easy to misinterpret or to get confused. Oh, Paul, I think I just lost you. Hold on. Oh no, you're there. Okay, it's just the video. I can hear you. Okay, the video keeps dropping. I don't know what's going on. So it's that's why when I read what I see other people talking about things, and people always like to chime in with it's true or it's false. It's like, I don't know. I mean, maybe something is happening and this person is misinterpreting it. Maybe they're not understanding it correctly. Maybe it's not quite what they think it is. But I think there's a lot more going on, and there's a lot of experiences that people are having that are real and that are happening, but it just might not be what they think, because when you get into the phenomena of consciousness, it gets really confusing, and it gets very complicated very, very quickly. Especially when you understand that it's an interactive system. You're projecting out, it's affecting you. It's like everyone's affecting each other. There's this whole astral bubble essentially that we're in. We're affecting it. It's affecting us. It's all like one big soup of consciousness that we're all swimming in, and so everything gets very, very, very messy very quickly, and very difficult to parse and to understand what's happening. So cool. Well, thanks everyone, and we will see you again next week.